5 things I feared about aging and what actually happened. They don't tell you how loud the quiet becomes. When the pace slows, when the calendar stops overflowing, when mirrors start to reflect someone you don't quite recognize anymore, you begin to hear it. That low hum of fear, not a scream, not even a whisper. Just this constant quiet wondering, is this what growing older is supposed to feel like? I remember waking up on my 60th birthday, staring at the ceiling, and feeling hollow. Not because life had been unkind to me. I had worked hard, loved deeply, raised children, paid bills, laughed with friends. I had done what I was supposed to do, but underneath the routine victories and worn-in comforts there was this undercurrent, this uneasy tug that I had reached the edge of something I didn't know how to name: aging. The thing we all know is coming, but secretly hope will be the exception too. I wasn't afraid of wrinkles or gray hair. Those are easy. No, the fear was quieter and sharper. I was afraid of losing who I was, of becoming a faded version of myself in someone else's rearview mirror. I was afraid that life had peaked, and everything else would just be the slow descent. And you know what's funny? None of that is quite how it happened. That's why I'm here, speaking to you. Not from a mountaintop of wisdom, but from the lived-in chair of someone who got older and survived the parts I once feared most. No polished self-help promises, just the truth about what I thought aging would do to me, and the surprising, often beautiful ways it didn't. I want to tell you what really happened, the things that changed, the things that didn't, the things I let go of, the things I held on to, and the parts of myself I didn't even know existed until time peeled back the layers. Maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you are. Maybe someone you love is walking through it right now. Either way, I hope what I share helps you breathe a little easier. Because aging isn't just about getting older, it's about becoming more human. Let's talk about it. I spent the better part of my life waking up to an alarm clock, slipping into a shirt with my name or title stitched on it, and heading into a world that needed something from me. Meetings, deadlines, responsibilities, people calling my name. It all gave me a sense of place. I mattered. I was necessary. Then one day I wasn't. Retirement didn't happen like it does in commercials. You know, the ones with the smiling couple walking hand in hand on a beach somewhere, no worries. No wrinkles, just endless sunsets and smooth jazz. No, for me it felt more like stepping off a moving train and realizing the world just kept going without me. There was no grand send-off, no applause. One day I turned in my keys, cleaned out my desk, and the next, I was sitting at the kitchen table wondering whether it was too early to eat lunch. I thought I'd feel free. I thought it would be like taking off a heavy coat I'd worn for decades. But instead, I felt naked. No one needed me to be anywhere. No one was waiting on my decisions. No one was calling me boss or coach or even, "Hey, can you help me with this?" It was just me, the silence, and the creeping question I didn't want to face. Now what? The truth is, I didn't miss the job. I missed the meaning it gave me. I missed waking up knowing that someone somewhere was counting on me to show up. Without that, I started to feel like I was slowly disappearing. For a while, I tried to fill the void with distractions, home projects, short trips, even binge watching, shows I never had time for. But the ache was still there. Purpose isn't something you can substitute with busy work, and that's when I learned something that changed everything. Meaning isn't tied to what you do. It's tied to how you show up. One morning, I was standing in line at the grocery store when I noticed the young cashier struggling to keep up. She looked tired, flustered. The person in front of me was impatient, sighing loudly, clearly irritated. And something in me shifted. I leaned in, smiled, asked how her day was going. She blinked like she didn't expect kindness at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. We chatted for a moment. I cracked a joke. She laughed. Not a big thing, but it felt like something real. That night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. Today, I made someone feel seen. It hit me. Maybe this chapter of my life wasn't about doing more. Maybe it was about being more present, more attentive, more generous with the little moments most people rush through. I started showing up in places I used to overlook. I joined a local mentorship program, met with high school students who were still figuring out their way. I didn't have a job title, but I had something to offer. Stories, mistakes, encouragement, presence. I helped a neighbor fix their fence. I started calling old friends I hadn't talked to in years. I wrote letters, actual handwritten ones, to people who had changed my life. And the more I gave without needing a title or a paycheck, the more I realized purpose isn't something we retire from. It evolves. Sometimes it looks like leading a team. Sometimes it looks like making soup for someone who's grieving. Sometimes it looks like holding the door open a little longer, listening a little deeper, forgiving a little faster. We spend so much of our lives thinking, purpose is this big thing we have to chase. But in this season of my life, I've found it's made up of small things we choose to show up for, again and again. So no, I didn't lose my purpose when I got older. I found one that fits better now, quieter maybe, but deeper. It doesn't ask me to prove anything. It just asks me to pay attention and care, and that I've learned is more than enough. I used to believe loneliness was a room with no one in it. That's the version they show us in movies. The old man in a quiet house, the empty chair across the table, the echo of footsteps in a hallway that used to be full. I feared that kind of emptiness. I feared sitting at the dinner table alone. I feared birthdays with no candles. I feared the phone growing still. But what I didn't realize was that loneliness isn't always about who's around you. It's about whether your life still feels like it belongs to anyone. When my friends started passing, when holiday gatherings grew quieter, when people I'd known for decades moved away or simply faded from my life, I felt a kind of sorrow I wasn't prepared for. No one teaches you how to grieve someone who didn't die but simply drifted. Even family changed. The kids got older. Their lives got busier. I understood, of course. Life moves forward. But understanding doesn't always stop the sting when the calls get shorter and the visits less frequent. There were days when I'd walk into a room and no one would look up. Not out of malice, just life. People are in a hurry these days. Everyone's got somewhere to be, something urgent on their screens. I started to feel invisible, like I was fading into the background of the world I used to be part of. And that's when the loneliness became real. Not because I was alone, but because I no longer felt connected. So I withdrew. Quietly, the way most older people do. I stopped reaching out first. I convinced myself that no one really had time, that maybe this was just how the story goes. You matter, then you age, then you become a footnote. But one afternoon, everything changed because of a spilled cup of coffee. I was sitting on a park bench, watching the ducks when a woman about my age walked by, juggling her purse, a book, and a coffee cup. The lid popped off and coffee went everywhere. Instinctively, I jumped up to help. We both laughed as we scrambled to clean up the mess with whatever napkins we had. That 30-second moment turned into a 30-minute conversation. Turned out she lived a few blocks away. She'd just lost her husband the year before. She said she didn't talk to many people anymore. Said most of her friends had either passed or moved. That conversation sparked something. Not romance. No need for drama. Just connection. A shared ache. A recognition. We started meeting for walks. Then others joined. Now every Sunday we sit in the park. No plans, no pressure. Just a group of older souls showing up for each other in the simplest way, by being there. That's what aging taught me. The people you're meant to walk with might not always be the ones you started the journey with, but there are still people walking. And if you dare to look up, to speak first, to wave first, to say hello again, you'll find them. I also reconnected with people I never thought I'd talk to again. Old classmates, former neighbors, even a cousin I hadn't spoken to in decades. One email, one apology, one, "I've been thinking about you," and suddenly, a door opened. But maybe the biggest surprise of all was learning how to enjoy my own company. To sit in silence and feel full, not empty. To read without distraction. To cook for myself with the same care I once reserved for guests. To walk and notice the sky, the trees, the scent of jasmine in the late afternoon. I started writing letters to my grandchildren, even though they're still too young to understand them. I'm saving the letters for them to read one day. Maybe when I'm gone. Maybe when they need to hear my voice again. That's a kind of connection too. A bridge between moments, between generations. Loneliness is real. I won't pretend it isn't. But it doesn't have to be permanent. What I feared most, the vanishing, the silence, the distance, became something else when I leaned into it. I discovered that as we grow older, we may have fewer people in our lives, but the connections we do have, they can go deeper than ever. We're not networking anymore, we're not impressing, we're not comparing, we're just being. And that's where real connection lives, in the honesty of showing up without a mask. So no, aging didn't condemn me to a life of loneliness. It invited me to reach wider, listen deeper, and show up more gently. And in doing so, it gave me something richer than I ever expected. Not a crowd, but a circle. Not noise, but warmth. Not just people, but people who truly see me. I used to believe my body was something I could control, push harder, sleep less, power through. That was my mantra for decades. Like many people, I saw my body as a tool to be sharpened, not a friend to be nurtured. It served me well for a time. I stayed strong, energetic, capable. I outran illness, bounced back from injury, carried heavy loads, literally and figuratively. But there was always a whisper at the back of my mind. What happens when this body no longer does what you tell it to? That was one of my greatest fears about aging, and that my body would betray me. That it would become fragile, unpredictable, even foreign. That I'd wake up one day and not recognize the person in the mirror, not because of wrinkles or gray hair, but because something fundamental had changed. Something I couldn't fix with effort or willpower. And it did happen, just not in the way I imagined. It didn't come crashing down all at once. It was a slow unraveling, a little less balance, a little more soreness in the knees. The first time I forgot where I put the keys, not just misplaced, but no memory of touching them. The first time I needed help opening a jar, the first time I looked at stairs and thought, maybe I'll take the elevator. And then there was the morning I stepped out of bed and felt the sharp sting of arthritis in my hands. It was small, but it was a shift, a signal. My body, once so responsive, so obedient, had started to write its own story. At first I was angry. I grieved. I fought back with gym routines, supplements, diets, routines, anything to reclaim the feeling of youth. I wanted to reverse time, to regain control. But the more I resisted, the more exhausted I became. Not just physically, but emotionally. And then slowly a change. I began to listen. One morning I sat quietly before getting out of bed, just noticing the feel of my breath. The way my chest rose, the soft ache in my legs, the gentle rhythm of my heart. I realized I'd never really thanked my body, not once, for carrying me through decades of life. Through heartbreak, through childbirth, through late nights and early mornings, through illness, joy, fear, love. This body of mine had never actually betrayed me. It had stayed with me. Even now, with its creaks and slowness and surprises, it was still here, still trying, still waking up. So I stopped fighting and started honoring. I started walking, not to burn calories, but to feel the ground under my feet. I started stretching, not to get flexible again, but to feel where tension lived in me. I started eating not just for health, but for joy. I lit candles at dinner, even if I was eating alone. I let myself taste, savor, and be present. I began to appreciate the things my body could do instead of mourning what it couldn't. Yes, I can't run like I used to, but I can still dance. In my kitchen, barefoot to an old Motown record. Yes, my hands tremble some mornings, but I can still hold my grandson's hand. Yes, My back aches when I stand too long, but I can still rise from bed and dress myself and greet the morning. You start to realize how sacred these little things are once you know they're not guaranteed. Gratitude became my new strength. Not the kind you build with muscle, the kind you build with perspective. Every scar, every wrinkle, every ache has a story behind it. A reminder that I've lived. I also learned to ask for help. Something my younger self would have called weakness. But now I see the quiet courage it takes to say, I can't do this alone. Aging taught me that dignity isn't in doing everything yourself. It's in letting yourself be supported without shame, even rest. Something I once saw as laziness became sacred. I don't feel guilty for slowing down. I don't rush through mornings anymore. I let the sun come in. I stretch. I breathe. And some days that's more than enough. There was a time I feared aging meant becoming broken, dependent, irrelevant. But what I've learned is this. Our bodies are not betraying us. They're reminding us that we are human, finite, fragile, and utterly miraculous. If you're watching this and noticing those first changes in your own body, the stiffness, the slowness, the signals you can't ignore anymore, I want to say something simple. You're not failing. You're transforming. Treat your body not like a machine to push harder, but like an old friend that's walked with you through everything. Because that's what it is. I no longer look in the mirror to see what's gone. I look to see what remains, and what's still possible. And every breath I take now carries a silent thank you, because this body may not be what it once was, but it's mine, and it's still here, and that's more than enough. It snuck up on me slowly, the feeling that I was no longer part of the conversation. I wasn't invited to the brainstorming sessions anymore. I wasn't the first one people called when they needed advice. I started noticing how younger folks talked around me instead of to me. It was subtle, a look, a tone, a quiet dismissal wrapped in politeness. At first I brushed it off, but after enough time it started to wear on me. That's when the fear set in. Maybe I've outlived my usefulness. Maybe my time to matter has already passed. Maybe I've become background noise in a world that's turned up the volume on youth. And it's not just a personal feeling, it's baked into the culture. Turn on a screen and what do you see? Young faces, new trends, speed, novelty, endless reinvention. It's easy to believe the lie that if you're not keeping up, you're being left behind. I didn't need a spotlight. I didn't need praise. But I wanted to feel like I still had something to give. Something to say that wasn't immediately brushed aside by a younger, louder, faster voice. That feeling of invisibility, that was what I feared the most. And then one evening, something shifted. It was a quiet night. My granddaughter, all of 17 years old, was sitting with me at the kitchen table. We weren't talking about anything profound, just school, music, social media, her world. I mostly listened. But then she asked me something that stopped me cold. Grandpa, how did you know when you were doing the right thing with your life? It wasn't just the question, it was the way she asked it. Eyes wide, genuinely curious, like I had something worth knowing. And in that moment I realized she wasn't asking because I was old. She was asking because I'd lived, because I carried something time couldn't buy. Experience, perspective, scars that had healed into wisdom. So I answered her. I told her stories I hadn't told in years, about risks I took, mistakes I made, people I lost, choices I questioned. And as I spoke, she leaned in closer, like she was gathering breadcrumbs through the woods of her own life. That moment stayed with me. Not because I impressed her, but because I saw the hunger in her for something real, something honest, something earned. And I understood something I wish I'd known sooner. Relevance doesn't come from being up to date, it comes from being true. I began to speak more, not louder, not with arrogance, but with presence. At the community center, I started joining the discussions instead of sitting quietly. Not to dominate, but to offer a lived view no one else had. I shared my perspective in local meetings, reached out to younger people, and not to teach, but to invite conversation. You'd be surprised how many are listening, waiting, hoping someone older than them will say, "I've been through it. You're not alone." The world is noisy, yes, but it's also starving for depth. And age, if you let it, can give you that depth. I also started writing again, not for publication, just to share, with friends, with family, even with strangers online. The first time someone commented, "This is exactly what I needed to hear," I cried. Because it reminded me, our voice doesn't expire. It just takes a different shape. I had feared that getting older meant becoming irrelevant, that my opinions would be outdated, my values too traditional, my presence unnecessary. But instead, I've learned this. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more truth. And older voices, quiet, considered, tested, can be the grounding force in a storm of trends. We may not be the first ones people turn to anymore, but we can be the ones they remember when the surface stuff fails them, when life gets real, when they need to feel seen, heard, steady. You don't have to shout to matter. You don't have to be followed to be worth following. You don't have to be on trend to still hold light. If you're feeling overlooked, passed by, silenced, I see you, and I want to remind you, your story is still unfolding. Your voice still has weight. And somewhere, someone is waiting to hear exactly what only you can say. You are not irrelevant. You are a well, not a fountain, not a firework, not a fleeting spectacle, but a well of life, experience, and meaning. And someone someday will be thirsty enough to come drink. Regret is a slow companion. It doesn't burst through the door or shout in your face. It sits beside you quietly, especially in the late hours, asking questions you don't always want to answer. I used to fear regret more than death. Not because I had lived a bad life, far from it. I did my best. I loved where I could, worked hard, tried to raise my family right, stayed true to my word. But the fear wasn't about what I had done. It was about what I hadn't. The words I didn't say, the apologies I never made, the dreams I shelved for later, and later never came. I thought aging would mean watching those regrets rise up like ghosts, surrounding me, weighing down my final years. I imagined lying in bed, too tired to fix anything, whispering I should have into the dark. But what actually happened was different, and strangely, more merciful. In the beginning, yes, regret visited me often. It crept in during quiet moments, folding laundry, driving alone, staring at old photos. I'd see a face I hadn't spoken to in years and feel that familiar sting. Why didn't I call more? Why did I say that? Why didn't I stay? And for a time I tried to shove it down, distract myself, pretend it didn't matter, but eventually age brings a gift, a strange, uninvited wisdom. You can't outrun your past, but you can make peace with it. So I stopped avoiding it. I sat with it. I let the old memories come. Some brought warmth. Some brought tears. But I let them all in, like visitors who had traveled a long way to say one last thing. And then, something beautiful happened. Instead of judging my past self, I started to understand him. He was doing his best. He was scared sometimes. He made choices with the knowledge he had, the wounds he carried, the pressures he faced. I stopped seeing him as someone who failed me. I saw him as someone I needed to forgive. One by one, I started writing letters. Not to send, just to write. To the people I hurt. To the people who hurt me. To the people I missed. To the child I once was. To the parent I tried to be. To the spouse I loved imperfectly. To the version of myself that carried so much and didn't always know what to do with it. I said the things I had never said aloud. And I cried. Hard. For the first time in a long while. It wasn't easy, but it was healing. Then came the next part, making amends when I still could. I called a friend I hadn't spoken to in 20 years. We didn't fix everything, but we laughed. We remembered. We forgave. That was enough. I told my son I was proud of him, not just in passing, but like I meant it. like he'd been waiting to hear it for decades. I told my daughter I wished I'd been gentler when she was growing up. She didn't say much at first, but she hugged me longer than usual when she left. Not all bridges can be rebuilt, but some can. And even when they can't, we can still stand on our side and plant flowers where the road ends. There are still moments, of course, when regret visits me. But now, it doesn't come to torment me. It comes to remind me how far I've come, how human I've been, how much I've learned. And here's the thing, no one tells you. Regret loses its power when you stop letting it shame you and start letting it shape you. Because every regret I carry has become a part of the wisdom I now offer others. To the young person rushing through life, I say, slow down, make the call, apologize early. Say I love you when you feel it. Don't wait for the perfect moment, it rarely comes. To those in midlife, overwhelmed and tired, I say, you're doing better than you think. Don't let fear make your decisions. And don't think it's too late to change the ending of your story. To my fellow elders, I say, your regrets do not define you. Your grace does. Your courage to look back and still move forward does. The way you love now, more honestly, more humbly, that's what matters. I once feared that regret would ruin the end of my life. But it didn't. It softened me. It opened my heart. It taught me to be kinder to the person I used to be, and gentler with the one I am now. Because peace, I've found, isn't the absence of regret. It's the presence of compassion. And when I look back now, I no longer say, I should have. I say, I tried. I say, I grew. I say, I'm still becoming. And that's enough. That's more than enough. If you had told me years ago that I would come to see aging not as a loss but as a liberation, I would have smiled politely and changed the subject. Back then, aging was a shadow always just behind me. A reminder that time was ticking, that the best days were probably behind me, that I'd soon be left watching the world pass me by. I carried fears like they were facts, that I'd lose my purpose, be left alone, watch my body crumble, become irrelevant, and drown in regret. But now, sitting here, older, yes, but more awake than I've ever been, I can tell you the truth. Aging didn't break me. It freed me. It freed me from the pressure to prove myself, from the race to be more, do more, have more, from the noise of comparison, the weight of expectation, the myth that youth is the only time worth living fully. I no longer wake up asking, what should I become? Now I ask, how can I be more of who I already am? I don't measure my days in accomplishments anymore. I measure them in moments. The sound of my grandson's laughter. The way my coffee tastes just a little better when I take the time to really enjoy it. The quiet joy of an afternoon nap without guilt. The soft ache of old joints that remind me I've walked this earth for decades. And I'm still here. Used to think the goal was to stay young for as long as possible. Now I know the real goal is to grow whole. And wholeness doesn't come from holding on to what once was. It comes from embracing what is. No, I don't move as fast. I don't remember every detail. I don't take on the world the way I used to. But I love deeper. I listen longer. I forgive faster. I see people, really see them, in ways I never did when I was busy climbing ladders and chasing clocks. I've learned that beauty shifts as you age. It stops living in your reflection and starts living in your presence. Your laugh lines become the map of a life that knew joy. Your scars, the evidence of battles survived. Your silence, a wisdom that knows when words are no longer needed. And if you're still young or somewhere in the middle, and you're afraid of growing older, I get it. I really do. You're afraid of slowing down, of being forgotten, of losing what you worked so hard to build. But let me tell you something. What you think aging takes away, it often replaces with something far more enduring. Not speed, but stillness. Not popularity, but peace. Not ambition, but meaning. This chapter of life, it's not the epilogue, it's the deepening. It's the honest part, The part where you stop pretending and start becoming. The part where you realize that what you've survived matters more than what you missed. There's a softness now in the way I carry myself. Not because I've grown weaker, but because I no longer need to carry so much. I've shed the weight of needing to be understood all the time. I've let go of the people who only loved the younger version of me. I've stopped fearing the mirror because it no longer defines me. This freedom didn't come easy. It came through loss, through letting go, through learning to sit with silence and not be scared of it. But it's real. It's mine, and it's available to anyone willing to walk through aging with open eyes and a softer heart. So no, aging isn't the enemy. It's the invitation to love without conditions, to speak without noise, to live without apology, to forgive the past, hold the present, and let the future come as it will. If you're scared of what's ahead, I hope this helped you breathe a little easier. Because this isn't the end. It's the real beginning. And you're not fading. You're unfolding. And if no one's told you lately, your voice still matters. Your life still matters. You still matter, more than you know.